Welcome to Music Mania. I'm your host King Crusoe, you can call me KC, and today we have another huge month just in terms of how many albums and EPs came out that I listened to and that I'm going to be ranking and talking about today. I thought August was already a pretty big month where I talked about, I want to say like 21, 22 albums, somewhere thereabouts. It was a little over 20. This time around we have very nearly 30, and I'm pretty sure there were at least a few albums that I missed somewhere and that I forgot about and haven't listened to. So if there are any major releases, particularly in the metalcore, deathcore side of things, let me know so that I can go back and like update the music board lists that I'm going to be using for the bulk of this video. Or rather, I'm not going to be using the list for the bulk of this video, but it'll be tangential. I don't want to waste any extra time at the beginning of this, because if last month's Music Mania episode is any indicator, this is going to be a long one. So let's just jump into things and start off with my number 29 pick of the month, my least favorite album of September. We'll work all the way up to my number one release. My least favorite one was I.O. by 1056. This is probably going to be a little bit of a hot take. I think most of my friends who have been listening to this particularly have really liked it. I just wasn't super into what these guys were doing with this release. I wish I could say more about it other than what I said in my very review here, that it just didn't vibe with me. Like, it doesn't work. Something about it wasn't clicking for me, even though I don't think this album is bad. It wasn't a bad album, just not something that I really wanted, I guess. So it just didn't really work. There were these couple of standout tracks here, but like those were, I had to kind of force myself to pick a couple standout tracks for this one, because everything was just kind of, I don't know. It didn't fully work, and that was a little bit unfortunate, but that's how things played out. So I'm sorry to everybody who likes this album. It's good, it's fine, it's decent, just not for me. So I don't want to disparage it too much. Next up, we have another thing that's going to be a little bit of an unpopular opinion here. PF Radio 2 by Peeling Flesh. For reference, I've never listened to Peeling Flesh before, so I have no idea if the things they were doing with this are things that they tend to do in general. But the amount of like samples and the particular types of like rap type stuff that were appearing on a lot of these songs just did not work for me. I want to say the first like 2-3 tracks or something were fine. Channel Zero was the one song that I was like, yeah, this is a really good song. It's definitely a standout track. I'll put that there. And if the rest of the album had been like Channel Zero, I would have probably liked this album a lot, actually. But like the rest of it just wasn't that. Like I said, I don't know why this didn't really click with me. Just the things that they were doing here didn't work. And it's not that I don't like those things out of principle. Like I said, I'm not against most of the ideas on display here. Just the exact execution on this particular album just didn't really work for me. So that's where I fell with it, which is, again, another unfortunate thing. I wanted to like this more than I ended up doing. So, okay, yeah, that's there. I can't remember what number we're even on at this point. I think that's 28. So this should be like 27, right? LSD by Cardiacs. I've never listened to Cardiacs before. And I went into this with a very open mind and thought it was very decent. I mean, I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars compared to the last couple albums, which I gave like 2 out of 5. Cardiacs is not a style of music that I would typically listen to the vast majority of the time, so a lot of my reception of this was like, this is pretty solid, and also too long. I understand that LSD is a double album, so it's very lengthy, just kind of inherently because of that, and I also know it comes after a very long hiatus for the band because of the head, the lead vocalist, I believe the main songwriter as well, having had like a stroke or something. Some major medical event happened like 2008, somewhere thereabouts, and then recently died, if I'm not mistaken. And the band decided to collect the music that was supposed to be the album and kind of honor him with making it into an actual full release. I liked a lot of what was going on here, but like the long songs, the 6+ minute songs, didn't really click for me. I think the overall 80-minute runtime was definitely a little bit too long. I enjoyed the first half of it a lot more than the second half of it. As a result, I just felt like it kind of wore itself out a little bit. But again, Cardiacs is not a band I've listened to. It's not a style of music that I would listen to most of the time anyway. So a lot of my opinion on this is like, I'm not qualified to really recommend it. If you like this, I know a bunch of Cardiac fans who are like, this is amazing, like this is really, really good. I'm very happy for these people. I thought it was a solid album as well, but I would have to get a little bit more into Cardiacs to appreciate this more than I currently do. So that's where I fall on that. I don't dislike this album at all, but ran a little over long. That's primarily why it's so low. Next up is, I don't even know if this one's going to be a hot take, but I did not like Violent Nature by I Prevail very much, and I'm going to be that guy. Brian's voice was a huge part of what makes I Prevail unique to me, and without Brian's voice, and particularly the type of songwriting they decided to go into for this album, they sound just like any other band now. And while that isn't necessarily a bad thing, I'm somebody who's generally a very forgiving of things that sound like any other band, right? I like metalcore enough that even the generic stuff I still tend to really enjoy. But if I'm listening to I Prevail, I want I Prevail, whether they're earlier era with their first EP and album, or even the last couple of albums. They're both very different styles, but they both felt like I Prevail. This doesn't feel like I Prevail, not least because Brian's gone. But the songwriting in general, it was so generic that a lot of the songs actually felt like other artists. There's a song on here that sounds like Memphis May Fire. There's a song on here that sounds like it is trying to be another artist. I forget who. I don't remember if I said it in the actual review itself, but like there's at least 3 or 4 different songs. Oh yeah, Stay Away sounds like it's trying to channel a little bit of Motionless in White. Into Hell, and I remember saying this when the single came out, was like, this sounds like a Memphis May Fire song. This isn't I Prevail. There were a ton of moments that sounded like Fit for a King. Like, this just doesn't sound like I Prevail. So I was very salty about that. I don't like it. I'm never going to listen to Violent Nature again because it just did not stand out as metal, as like, you know, stupendous metalcore in the first place. And because, again, if I'm listening to I Prevail, I want not this. So yeah, that's my opinion on that. Next up is Icy Stars' The Wheel. Funny that I put this above Violent Nature, even though I rated it lower. I don't know. I could appreciate some things about The Wheel to a degree, even though there's a lot of things that didn't really click for me. It's not like the worst thing in the world. It's just not good. And I think my saltiness about Violent Nature is the main reason why I rank it below this. This isn't an inoffensive album, I guess. That's probably why Violent Nature is ranked below it for me, is because to me, Violent Nature is offensive. The Wheel is just, it's kind of whatever, so that's why it's down low. Next up, we have Convergence, Two Minds in One by Villain of the Story, which, again, this is a similar case to I Prevail here, but not quite as bad, where I Prevail failed to hold up any kind of I Prevail identity through the change in clean vocals and stuff like that. Villain of the Story did manage to stay sounding like Villain of the Story, even though this is their first album with a new clean vocalist after Logan left. I think Logan was the name of the previous vocalist. I'm sorry if I forget that. I at least give the band props for still sounding like Villain of the Story, but not much about this album really stood out to me very much, unfortunately. And then there's also the fact that the clean vocals didn't really stand out much to me either. Much of the songwriting was just kind of okay. So 2 of the singles, I think, were part of my favorite track list, if I'm not mistaken. I know at least one of these was a single, but yeah, okay album, not bad. I'm glad that Villain of the Story still sounds like Villain of the Story, but I definitely miss what these guys were doing with their first 2 full-length albums, and they've kind of shifted a little bit away from that with each album release since. Still solid metalcore, solid ballads as well, but nothing particularly unique. Next up is going to be Silos by Starset. This one's probably going to be a hot take just because I don't hate Starset, actually. I like Starset quite a bit, but I want to like them so much more than I do, and Silos is a great example of that. Their first 2 albums, solid. Vessels is actually really good, but if I go back and listen to it now, it's like so tame. in ways that I don't know, I don't want this to sound offensive, but like their first couple albums are very tame musically in a way that I don't connect to very much anymore. Like there's a lot of alt metal that I still really like. Breaking Benjamin is an example. Starset, I fell out of favor with them, I guess. Then their next two albums got heavier musically, like they started tuning things down a little bit lower, which is something that I should like, but a lot of the songwriting didn't really change, so there felt like there was a mismatch in the identity that I wasn't really clicking with. And then Silos is like the time where it seemed like they were trying to change the songwriting a little bit, actually go more towards a core direction, like their lower tunings and stuff like that were doing. And some of the songs succeed, like Brave New World, easily my favorite Starset song. A couple of the other singles on this were also some of the better songs on the album. But by the time this album came out, they'd already released almost all of the original songs as singles, and almost all the rest of the track list was just interlude type stuff. And none of these interludes I felt like were really necessary. I know Starset is a very cinematic, like story focused artist. None of that just really clicked for Silos. Overall, like I liked a couple songs a lot, but I feel like every single time they release an album, they miss a lot of the potential. Like they do some things that are just like, okay, this could get a little bit more interesting. This could click better for me. And then it just doesn't. So Silos, I'm very disappointed by, I will admit. Next, we're moving on to item number 23 on this list, which is an EP by Voluntary Mortification. I'm in a couple of music groups on Facebook where a couple members of these guys were kind of like sharing this stuff. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll check this out. Solid EP, don't really have much to say about it. I think like the first song isn't really the best way to start the EP for me. It's a little bit much, but by the time I got through the entire product, the last few songs in particular, I was just having a really good time. Nothing super stand out. It's also like a little bit more of a chuggy type of deathcore than I tend to love, so it's a little bit lower because of that. But if you like, you know, classic kind of deathcore, if you like, you know, mid-late 2000s deathcore, specifically on the more chuggy side of things, then Voluntary Mortification is definitely for you. You should give this EP a shot. Next up, 22 is going to be Hit It by Villanova, however that's pronounced. This one I was very disappointed by because I had a lot of friends like talking about how it's like the fun kind of metalcore, you know, if you like fun metal things, you know, just goofy, kind of silly, fun stuff. So in a way, I might have been expecting this to be a little bit different than it was sonically, which is kind of a problem because I wanted to like this. There are moments that are pretty good, you know, it's generally fun metal things. It is absolutely that kind of vibe. But for whatever reason, the album just didn't work for me in total, and a lot of that is probably because the vocalist sounds super similar to Spencer Sotelo from Periphery without being Spencer Sotelo from Periphery, and some of their songs tried to channel like Periphery, proggy type of energy at times, and that gave me whiplash, like a lot of whiplash in a couple of tracks. So there's like a lot of this album that feels like it's trying to be both fun metalcore type of thing, but also trying to channel some like Periphery type of stuff, and that mold, I guess, just didn't really work for me. I don't know what didn't click, but something didn't click. So I don't know. This is one I wanted to like a lot more. A lot of my friends really loved it, said that it was like a surprise, like album of the year contender. It's not quite that for me, and I wish I could say otherwise. Next up is Ether Metal by Esoterica. I don't know how these guys got on my radar. I think like Spotify randomly recommended me a single from these guys. And they're good. They're decent. They're solid. These guys are kind of like, man, what type of music even would I describe them as? I don't even know what kind of music I would describe this album as, but it's got a lot of clean vocals in it. I would say it's kind of like an alt metal type of thing. Probably alt metal might be the best descriptor, with a lot of clean vocals. It's solid. It's a vibe. It's definitely something to listen to as a full album. When I listened to a couple of singles, I was like, there's something going on with these singles. It's like kind of interesting, but I'll wait for the album to see what the vibe is. And as far as a vibe, this has a vibe, and that vibe really works. It really clicks. But you know, it's maybe not the most exciting thing in the world. It's definitely not the best thing in the world for me. It's not my favorite thing I've ever listened to. There are a couple of tracks on here that are super, super solid, but overall, this is like, if you want a good, like, sort of alt metal, atmospheric metal. That would be a term, atmospheric. If you want an atmospheric album experience, this is for that. But there's not really much else to say about it. It's decent, you know. Next up is Pink Moon by Silverstein, which these guys released another album that was like this, very short. I believe like same number of tracks, 8 minutes, 23 minutes, back earlier in the year, and this is basically the exact same time, exact same number of tracks and runtime. This is, I think, as an album, a little bit more consistent than Anti-Bloom was earlier in the year, so I liked it a little bit more than that, but it also doesn't have any standout tracks. Like, Anti-Bloom at least had, like, Confession, which is, like, an incredible song. Skin and Bones is also a really good song. All three of the singles, like, the 3 singles for Anti-Bloom were all really great. Pink Moon was one where, like, I think I listened to one of the singles, and it was okay, but like I said, just the album as a whole is solid. Like, it's more consistent, and one that I only begrudgingly call an album because it's only 8 songs and 23 minutes long. But I think that these two pieces together should be listened to at once. I do plan at some point here to go back and listen to both of them back to back as like a double album experience, and I think I might enjoy it a little bit more with that in context. But you never know, I might decide that like you should have taken the, you know, the 8 to 10 best songs from the album and put them together as, you know, a good album instead of a double album with a couple misses. I don't know. Pink Moon's good, it's just not incredible, right? So next up, we have The King is Still the King by Chris Tomlin, a very random pick on here for me. I am a Christian, I do like contemporary Christian music a good bit, and The King is Still the King is fine. If you like contemporary Christian music, you'll like this. If you don't like it, don't listen to it. And if you also like it sometimes but want it to be super special and unique, this to me didn't really strike as being anything particularly notable. It's good, there's a couple great songs on it, but you know, nothing really more to talk about than that. So solid album, but that's basically all I have to say about it. But now we're going to come back to this list here, and I will have to cover a little bit of the screen just to kind of hide a little bit of the future of what I'm ranking here. The reason why I come back to the list is because at rank 17 here, there should be an EP. All of the numbers for all the albums after this should be one higher than they are in the actual list. Number 17 should have an EP by Alex Chichikilo. I can't remember what the EP is called off the top of my head. I definitely put it up here. Yeah, Shapeless by Alex Chichikilo should be at rank 17. That's where I put it, but there's no music board page for that at this point, so that's why it is not in the video in the normal way. But now we will cut back to our regular ranking and start at number 16 here with Breach by 21 Pilots, which is solid. It's not as actively memorable as like Clancy was for me, but it's also a little bit more consistent than some of these guys' albums tend to be. As far as like ranking goes, I think I would put this in like 4th place for all of their albums, because it's definitely no Blurry Face, it's no Vessel, and I liked Clancy a little bit more just because Clancy had a handful of really standout songs, whereas Breach is very consistent but didn't have anything that was super memorable just for me. Next up is Pantheon by Dance Gavin Dance, and I have a few of these albums that I have to go and find my reviews for because I was having RAM issues earlier with so many tabs open. Don't know why I have so many notifications of followers all the time. Pantheon is solid. You know, there's a couple songs on here that are really bad actually because of like auto-tune and other random vocal production issues that are really silly and don't make any sense. But as far as songwriting goes, this album's solid and I'm happy with it. I wasn't very excited for it because of the singles. The singles didn't really work for me, but as an album, it totally works. I still, you know, kind of miss like Tillian as a vocalist. Tillian's vocals are just incredible for this type of music. So I will miss that going forward. But as far as, again, kind of retaining the Dance Gavin Dance vibe despite a little bit of that change in vocals, and that's definitely nothing that you're unfamiliar with this band anyway, it's pretty good. So, you know, Pantheon solid. That's all I really have to say about it. Next up, we'll talk about Travails by Surrender the Crown, which is decent. Like, if you want, like, good heavy metal that has like some solid riffs and that is almost all clean vocals is like gateway metal. Surrender of the Crown is really good gateway metal, and Travails is a really great example of that, where basically every song is good, solid, you know, you're not complaining about it at all. It doesn't overstay its welcome, but I have to give a shout out to the last song of this album, which is actually really, really good. It's worth listening to the album just to get to the last song. Because you kind of get an idea of like, okay, this is the standard bar of quality. That last song exceeds it so much where it's like, if every song on this album or on any Surrender of the Crown album was as good as this last song was, you would have a really, really standout band in the scene, particularly with gateway metal. As is, they're solid anyway, but like this last song was really great. So that's most of what I wanted to say about that. Next up, we have The Blue Nowhere by Between the Buried and Me, and this band, for me, is definitely a vibe that has to be listened to at very specific times. The Blue Nowhere, solid, but I also am very rarely in the mood to listen to Between the Buried and Me, so I got through this album and was just like, I really appreciate what that was. But I need to listen to this in context of the rest of the band's music to know how I actually really feel about it. And I'm not in the mood to listen to Between the Buried and Me that much right now, so it's not going to happen. But definitely a solid album nonetheless. So, you know, pretty good, not bad. And here we have the issues of the Ram stuff that we'll get into. But yeah, Gallows by Bless the Fall is a solid album. Where did I even have this ranked on the list? I don't even remember. It's okay. I'll figure it out in editing. Gallows is good. Like, it's not standout metalcore, and certainly not standout post-hardcore metalcore sphere type of stuff, but if you want something that's like, you know, a pretty pure distillation of what kind of like 2010s metalcore kind of like sounds like, particularly with that post-hardcore influence, this is a pretty good distillation of what that is, especially if you compare it to like Woe Is Me, which is another band that kind of resided in the same sphere in the early 2010s, for example. Woe Is Me's new album is like good, and I like it, but it's also got some problems, and it also has some like weird country influence in it that's not going to be super huge for some people. This album in comparison is like, if you just like 2010s metalcore, you will like this album. Simple as, you know, definitely nothing stand out. It seems like the average here is like pretty close to 3 stars, you know, nothing great, but good. Like, you just want something solid to spend the time on, that's what this album does. And again, let me look at where my actual review is. I gave it 3.5 stars, so yeah, like solid. I liked Gallows quite a bit. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Next up, more albums that I have to reload because of RAM issues. A Sign of Life by Gone Cold is a solid EP. If you want a pretty predictable and understandable reference for what core is, just kind of in general, metalcore in general, this EP is a pretty good way to get that without it being super long or wearing out its welcome. If you want a pretty good gateway into metalcore, like give somebody a really good idea of just what the genre kind of is, and not even like in a particular sense like what I said about Gallows. This is just in the sense of kind of over its lifespan, like where not even, okay, how do I want to say this? This isn't an example of how it has evolved. If you want to know where metalcore is this decade, like the last 5 years, this is a good EP for that, I guess. That's all I'll say about it. You know, it's solid, not fantastic, definitely not bad, solid. There Was a Light by Demon Hunter, however, is where I'm really surprised this month. I was not looking forward to this album at all, and that's because Exile sucked. Exile was a bad album, and it was bad because it was boring. The worst thing you can be is so boring that I can't even bother finishing your record. It's like there's at least like some bad albums that I won't finish, but like I can acknowledge that like I just don't like it, right? Or that it's not for me, or that like maybe somebody would like it, something like that. But if you're just really, really boring, then I'm like kind of annoyed that I wasted the time. And Exile was one of those albums where I'm pretty sure I got through like all but like 2 tracks. I got to the third to last song on that, and I was like, I've wasted an hour on this. I am mad that I've wasted an hour on this. Turned it off, and every single time I've thought about Exile since then has been with bitterness that I wasted my time on it. So I was not looking forward to There Is a Light here because I was worried it was going to be more of that, and because there were a couple of pre-album singles, some of those singles that aren't even on this album, mind you, that I listened to that were like, you guys are just so boring. What are you doing? You're wasting all of your potential. Like, you have so much capability to write really good and interesting songs, and you're just not doing it. So this album, I went into like expecting it to be bad, like Exile was again, and it was pretty solid actually. It's definitely their best album since Outlive. Maybe their best album since Outlive. I don't know. War I remember being pretty good, but Peace is pretty hit or miss. It's their best album since War, maybe since Outlive, so it's like really solid piece of work. And definitely comes back to show you that Demon Hunter is capable of being interesting. I was worried that they had stopped being able to be that after the last album, so definitely kudos for that. But this is another case kind of like Between the Buried and Me, where I have to be in a mood to listen to Demon Hunter, and I don't know precisely where I would rank There Was a Light here compared to a lot of their past stuff, because it's been years since I've listened to most of their past stuff, so I would have to do that at some point, and I'm not in the mood for Demon Hunter right now. Next up is a train of albums that don't have album covers on Music Board right now because of glitches in the system, I guess. Solastalgia by ATTRIBUTION, or however you pronounce that. Solid album. I really liked their 2023 album a lot back when one of my brothers introduced me to that. And I came to like it even more when I listened to it very shortly after my grandpa died last year, and that kind of like hooked emotionally for me. And then I figured out that these guys had another album coming soon, and the first single for it, which I think was The Ashen Falls, by the way, one of the better songs on the album in general. But that single was like so good, I'm like, okay, I'm ready for an album, and it did not disappoint. Really solid stuff. I don't even know what to describe these guys as. They're kind of like mellow death. I think they're mellow death. I think that's an okay to describe them. Not entirely sure, but whether or not that's the case, these guys are solid, and I really recommend checking them out. This album was good. I don't think it's on my album of the year list, unfortunately. It might be. It might like top 25 or something. This will hopefully end up in at least my honorable mentions for the year. It's super solid. But speaking more of Melodeath, was an album that was in my top 25 of the year before Solastalgia took it out. I just can't remember if, the Heritoire album has been since kicked out since then. But Paradise Lost, with their album Ascension, never listened to Paradise Lost before. I didn't even know they were Melodeath. I just saw that they had an album coming and some people I knew were talking about it. I was like, okay, I'll check that out when the album releases. And I'm happy I did, because I really like some Melodeath. I'm not huge on the genre, but when I like it, I like it. When I'm in a mood for it, I'm in a mood for it, and I like it. So Paradise Lost really hit for that. I was not expecting this to be Melodeath, so after the first song, I was like, or heck, it was even only a couple minutes into the first song, and I was like, okay, this is Melodeath, this is cool, I'm into this, and I really liked it. The album is super, super solid. My only real complaint with Ascension is what I said in the last paragraph here, is that half of the songs on this thing were too short. I think this album's only like 40 minutes long. I feel like almost all of the songs on this album could have gotten away with being 1 to 2 minutes longer, and they all would have been even better because of it, right? They would have had more time to expand on a couple of the ideas that felt underutilized. So you could have ended up with very easily a 50 to 60 minute long album out of this. And it honestly probably would have been better than it already was. And I liked it a lot already. So yeah. Next up is, again, another one of these situations. Flesh Stays Together by Dying Wish. I've never listened to Dying Wish before. But everybody was raving about this record when it came out, so I was like, I'll check it out. I have no reason not to. Got onto it, and 100% understandable why so many people think that this is like top of the year worthy. I'm still heavily debating whether this is in my personal top 25 or not, but it was solid. I think my only thing with this album is that sometimes the unclean vocals are just a little bit out of my personal preference. So a couple songs utilize them, particularly the first song, use unclean vocals in ways that irk me a little bit after a little while, which sometimes will hold an entire album back in general. The back half of the album also wasn't quite as good as the front half was, but overall, very solid album. Like I said, I totally understand why everybody else is in love with this thing. Very good album. I definitely recommend it. Next up is Premonitions by Synestia, which was kind of a surprise EP. I didn't know this was coming out until it showed up at the very beginning of the month. If you're not exhausted of that very symphonic, blackened deathcore sound that Lorna Shore has kind of founded in this decade and really pushed forward this decade, don't listen to this EP because it's just more of that stuff. But I like that, so I liked the EP. That's basically all I have to say about it. Speaking of Lorna Shore, their new album came out, and it's solid, very solid, but not as memorable as either their last couple of releases. For me personally, I have to say, I feel the Everblack festering within me kind of... Okay, I have a couple of different varying opinions on this. I don't think this is the best album ever. In fact, I think I might prefer Pain Remains over this album, simply because Pain Remains has the Pain Remains trilogy, which is like a brilliant three song, act. Like, it's incredible. Love those songs to pieces. I think this album doesn't have any of those standouts like those 3 songs were. There's some standout tracks, there's some really good songs on here, but there's no broader encompassing thing that the album just overall is that really sticks in my brain. So in that way, I was left slightly disappointed by it, but I also have to make a big bugaboo about the people who don't like this album, who call this, samey. It's like, oh, every song is the same, because they've been saying that about Lorna Shore since Pain Remains. Even on that album, they said every song sounds the same on it. And on that album, I will grant, that is basically true, but on this album, that's not true. I think if you're saying every song sounds the same on Everblack, you're not listening to the songs at all. You're just not paying attention, because there is some variation between almost every song that made them different. I can recall the songs on this song a little bit better, or on this album a little bit better than I can from Pain Remains, for example. So even though there's not any broader encompassing thing that makes me really hook onto this the way that Pain Remains had, I still think the album's solid. So I will make a big fuss about the people that say, oh yeah, every song sounds... No, every song does not sound the same on here, actually, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. It has a little bit more variation, but some of those variations didn't click for me. That's part of why I don't like it quite as much. But Lorna Shore's best piece of work is still the And I Return to Nothingness EP. That EP is incredible, so, that's where I sit. Next up is going to be a weird type of thing. Actually, we'll get to that in a little bit. I forgot that this EP was here. Face Yourself EP Fury. Solid. If you like deathcore, you'll like this. And if you want something that, again, kind of defines and encompasses what deathcore is without outstaying its welcome, this is a very good definition of what deathcore is right now, without being the blackened element. If you want non-blackened deathcore, this is doing that. So I really like it for that. I'm not sure how much this album would have really fit for me if it was, or this EP, I guess, if it was a full album, if it was twice as long as it is. But it definitely made it in my top 10 EPs of the year. Sometimes the unclean vocals were a bit much, but I was also just totally down for the vibe. It worked out for me, so, I recommend Fury. The next one, this is the album where it's am I really ranking this above Lorna Shore's album? And it's well, yes and no. I rate it higher, and I've also ranked it higher on my list personally, because for me, if I'm going to revisit albums from September 2025, I'm more likely to listen to this prospective album than I am Lorna Shore, but I actually think Lorna Shore's album is better. Just kind of objectively speaking. This is a very cut and dry... You know exactly what you're getting. You've listened to the first couple songs on it. You know exactly what all the rest of the songs sound like. But for me, that sound is something that I really love, so I'm not complaining about it. I kind of relate this album by perspective kind of to the last couple albums by, 1,000 Below? Something like that. I forget what they're called. Is it 1,000 Below? 1,000... I don't remember. Anyway, album's good. Really good. If you like metalcore, you'll like it. If you don't want to hear generic metalcore, you don't listen to it. It'll bother you. But like, I like The Weight of What I've Become. Very good. I enjoyed it a lot for sure. And I don't know. I think this is also kind of another talking point about the I Prevail album. One of the other things that Violent Nature did really well, and by really well, I actually mean to say really poorly, as the transition between the heavier and the softer songs, where it felt like whiplash. The transitions between those didn't work at all. You feel like you're listening to one thing and all of a sudden it's something different. It's like, what are you even doing here? Like, this doesn't work. The Weight of What I've Become does that a lot better, where you have a little bit more of that transition between some very more melodic songs, a couple softer songs, some of the much more heavy songs in different spots, kind of rotating between those sound styles. And it's a lot better. It's a lot more consistent, and it's also a lot more intentional, very, very much better designed. So that's something that I wanted to add. Next up is a little bit of cheating here, which is re-release of the Slipknot self-titled album. Just kind of funny. It's like 25th anniversary edition, even though it's like over a year after the 25th anniversary. But whatever. In either case, this album's good. I really love Slipknot, actually. I have a couple of their albums that I don't really like, but I overall really love them. They're still one of my favorite bands of all time. And their self-titled is great. So, like, I recommend this album insofar as it is the same thing as the 10th anniversary edition of the album, which is, you know, the album including, like, Purity, you know, with this track list, with Me Inside a little bit later, and Purity back where it was supposed to be. I still really don't like that they don't have Frail Limb Nursery in there as an intro into Purity. I would really like that to be in there. But they have the full album. As far as like the demos and remixes are concerned, that's the only justification this thing has for existing, is having a couple of more demos on it. I actually finally listened to these demos and remixes for the first time in my life here with this record, and like, they're okay. The irony is that I actually think the drums are actually mixed and produced better in the demos than they are on the actual album. So if you could like make the 17/18 track list of Slipknot and do the drums to sound slightly more like they sound in the demos, and like that's the only thing you change, this album would be like absolutely perfect. I would love it so much. So that's what I have to say about this. Like, if you like Slipknot, you like Slipknot. You've probably already listened to this. But I only recommend these anniversary versions of this debut album insofar as they actually have Purity on them, which is a good thing, and that's my recommendation for it. As far as like the demos and remixes, I don't think it's important enough to actually give those a listen. Once again, another one of these cases. This happened way, way too often. Cat's Claw, Perfect Death, however, is absolutely my album of the month, and is a contender for album of the year without any question at all in my mind at all, because this album is great. For reference, you have to understand, I don't really like Thal very much. Thal music is like kind of okay. It's usually a little bit too noisy for me. I don't love the complaint that people make about a lot of metal. It's just like, oh, it's just noise. Thal very often literally is just noise, and that, like, that's kind of the point sometimes. But Cat's Claw decided to use some of that Thal bigger soundscape, but also still make it core. So the songwriting is something that I am personally a lot more into, and the Thal elements are incorporated a lot more tastefully than a lot of Thal artists tend to do, which means that I enjoyed this album a ton, actually. The actual tasteful inclusions of the Thal stuff in there, brilliant. And the general songwriting was really good. I had a personal friend who, you know, commented on this album, who rated it 3 stars, was just like, every song sounds the same. And again, no, wrong. If you think every song sounds the same, you're not listening to it. But, you know, that's just me. I think if you like Alt, for example, Alt's album, I think like From the New World, that's what it was called last year. If you enjoy the alt style of Thal, you will like this for sure. So like, it's kind of in that sphere, which, funny enough, alt made my album of the year list last year, not least because it was like, okay, this is Thal I like. I respect this. This is even better. Like, this is way better than that. If you're someone who, like me, is not super hot on a lot of Thal stuff, check this out. It might change your mind. So yeah, now let's kind of like look at the ranking overall, actually, at this point. yeah, going into here, you actually should have a 29th option. Like I said, that EP by Alex Chichikalo should be in here somewhere, but this is my ranking for all of the September 2025 albums that I listened to, including EPs. Definitely a little bit of surprise here. This is my top 5. If you want to take out the Slipknot album, that's totally fine. I would not be upset if anybody wanted me to get rid of that, because it's kind of a cheap inclusion in that sense. But yeah, between like Perfect, Death, The Weight of What I Become, Fury, I Feel the Everblack, Premonitions, like has like my top 5 for the month. That feels pretty good. Then Flesh Stays Together, Ascension, Solastalgia, There Was a Light here. Gallows I might put above Gone Cold, actually. That would probably make sense. I'm going to make that decision right here. Yeah, because then these 5 albums being the next 5 albums in the list, again, really makes sense. So, like, September was a solid month. It's definitely not quite like August, though, where August had several favorites on it, including The Immortal. Speaking of Mellow Death, which I didn't talk about in the last one of these Music Mania episodes, because I listened to this album after that video came out. Again, like ton of like album of the year worthy stuff, where I think like these top 6 albums are all in my album of the year list, and this is in my EP of the year list for August. Like, that's how insane August was music wise. In September, I know this is in the list. This is in the list. I don't think this is in the list. Like I said, I think the Lorna Shore album is better. Hence why it's in my list, even though this one isn't. And this is in my EP list. So not quite as good, but like August was also just a standout month. So, you know, that is the list. Thank you guys for watching this episode of Music Mania. I know it was a little chaotic, also was very long. Again, I think these are always going to be very long if I'm doing them monthly. If there's any major releases that I missed this month, be sure to let me know. I do want to get in here very quick at the very end of this video, however, and just tell you that I actually listened to Nothing More's discography this month. This was something that I spent a good bit of the month doing, kind of as a surprise, and ranked their discography because I just checked all their albums out in one day. I am mad nobody made me listen to Spirits back when that came out. I'm so mad about that because the album is incredible, and I'm also mad that I didn't ever get told to listen to Nothing More self-titled back when I was getting into metal a little bit more back in like 2017, because like that album's good. I feel cheated out of both Spirits and Nothing More. So that's how I feel about that. But again, that's going to be the end of this episode of Music Mania. Thank you so much for watching if you did, and I'm sorry that it is a long video and that I was kind of all over the place and that I don't know how to shut up. So yeah, sorry about all that, but thank you for watching. For now, I've been your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, and I'll see you again in about a month for the next episode of Music Mania. In the meantime, I hope you check out any of the other videos that I have coming out.